We live? All right. Greetings and welcome to the March 21st meeting of the Government Operations Committee. I will start off by asking for a motion to approve minutes from our meeting on February 21st.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Okay, the minutes are approved, and then I will pass it over to Assistant Manager Josh Edwards to give us an preview of our agenda for today.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Parker. Good to be here tonight, and thanks for staff for being here, as well as staff from the Attorney's Office. We're looking forward to jumping back into discussing the Animal Control Ordinance. So a couple years ago, we created the first strategic plan for animal services, and part of that, in that plan, we identified the need to update the ordinance, and we're really excited to be able to do that today. We started that about a year ago, had to take a break as other items came up. But as y'all know, we're ready to jump right in. And tonight, our Animal Services Director, Crystal Barber's here, and she's going to lead us through hopefully at least the first 10 pages of the document and maybe the first 13, depending on how efficient we are. But we're here to answer all your questions and go through this, and we look forward to it. With that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Crystal.
Thank you. Let me share my screen here.
And as she does, just let y'all know kind of the format. We're going to go section by section. And so if y'all have questions, we can stop and discuss those questions, but we're not going to read it word for word. We know y'all have the document, but we'll give an intro, and we'll talk through any questions or concerns or edits you have, and we can get into the details wherever you want to, but we just didn't want to go through everything until y'all highlight that. So with that, Crystal, take us away.
Okay, so after I read the title of the section, I'm going to go through some definitions from that section, and then we'll kind of go from there. And then obviously, if you have any questions, just stop me. So the first section is going to be, and this is actually going to be page 4 of your document. It's keeping domestic animals and livestock under control. So one definition that we're going to take a look at, I apologize if I'm giving anyone seasickness, is domestic animal. This means any dog, cat, or other legally owned animal not defined as wildlife or livestock. The next one is going to be livestock itself, which means all animals kept as farm animals or raised for food production, including but not limited to goats, sheep, mules, horses, hogs, cattle, other grazing animals, farmed rabbits, fowl, bison, water buffalo, farm deer, llamas, and alpacas, but excluding any animal that is held and possessed legally in a manner that is not in conflict with provisions of OCGA Title 27, Chapter 5, and that's dealing with wild animals. And then the last one is going to be owner. And this one really relates to probably every section, so I won't reread this one, but this one starting out for this section. Owner means any person who owns, keeps, harbors, possesses, or otherwise keeps any domestic, non-traditional livestock or livestock animal for a period of 14 days, or any person who knowingly permits any domestic, non-traditional livestock or livestock animal to be kept, harbored, possessed, or otherwise kept upon his premises for a period of 14 days, or who has any animal under his or her care or responsibility, either temporarily or permanently at any time within Athens-Clarke County. Owner does not include a caretaker or the owner of the premises where a community cat colony is located. Before I go back to the section, did anyone have any questions on those definitions in particular?
Well, I do have a quick one.
Yeah.
And I think the situation, I got into the situation after we discussed this last time. But I did have a constituent a while back that had pot-bellied pigs. And my reading of these definitions now that we define now is, would pot-bellied pigs be allowed if they were being used as pets and kept in their home for most of the time?
So under this, I mean, they would be considered under that any animal, any domestic animal, because I believe, and I know Sherry said that she was having some technical difficulties, but I think that because they're not wildlife and potbelly pigs are not considered domestic or livestock, it would fall under that domestic animal.
Okay.
So essentially, they could be a pet. Yes, they're not considered livestock and they're not considered wild.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I think the updates to these definitions allow that. Before it was, we definitely had some difficulties. So, okay, fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. And so this first section, the problem that we're trying to solve with this first section is right now, if livestock get out, we can certainly pick them up, but there's not any ramifications. The owner can come get them, but we don't have a way to cite the owner, and it's not really in our ordinance how they need to be kept and how, the tethering of those. So this first section is how people need to keep domestic animals and livestock under control. And by changing the wording, this gives us the ability that if we pick up a potbelly pig, certainly they can reclaim it just like any other animal, but there's also going to be fees and possibly fines or consequences if we get them back. So those were definitely an issue that we have had in the past. And then the other thing with this is it updates the tethering language overall within the section. So again, I wasn't going to read it word for word, but did anybody, after looking over this section, did anyone have any concerns?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, just question. It just says cats. Why not dogs? Did I miss something?
For which part? I'm sorry.
The definition. I'm having trouble. It's hard because I don't have two screens. But when I was reading it earlier, it mentioned in the definition page of just ownership for cats, but didn't say ownership for dogs.
So under owner, it's anybody that keeps any domestic animal, non-traditional livestock animal, or livestock animal. It doesn't include the caretakers of the cat colony. So we exclude the community cat colonies from a lot of our provisions because they're not technically owners of those animals. They're caring for them, they're getting them altered and spayed and neutered, but they're not technically the owner. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I had a question regarding cat colonies as well. Is that also defined within the definition section, just so that, something that occurred to me where when we were discussing the definition of owner, you might have folks that, have a neighborhood cat that they feed, etc. Given that if it's for a period of 14 days or more, or if it's even temporarily, that then defining them as an owner. So I wondered if it was sort of delineated what a cat colony is, so that if they have like multiple cats that are neighborhood cats in there, that they're feeding or something like that, if that was then distinct from just having one. Yeah.
So caretaker, which later on, we won't be touching on it tonight, but the caretakers and the colonies have their own section on how they'll be provisioned. And I think probably all those answers will be in there. But yes, we do have caretaker is defined and a community cat is defined. And
fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. And in that section under colonies, we will line out those items.
Cool. Appreciate it.
No problem. Did anyone else have any other questions or edits on this first section? And I apologize. Let me get back to the. I know it's a lot of information, so. Okay. So the next section, 413, is specific requirements for confinement. And again, I'm going to go ahead and read confinement and caretaker to you out of the definitions. Caretaker means any person who provides care, including food, shelter, or medical care, to a community cat. A caretaker shall not be considered the owner of a community cat. And then the next one would be confinement. And confined means kept within an electronic confinement system, building, pen, catio, or fenced area or other structure built to prevent escape by the domestic animal or livestock being confined. Electronic confinement systems shall not be considered an adequate means of confinement if the system is improperly installed, malfunctioning, in disrepair, damaged, switched off, or otherwise deactivated or non-operational. Any domestic animal or livestock confined by means of an electric confinement system must wear at all times an appropriate and properly functioning receiving device while within the confines of the system. Signage indicating the presence of an electronic confinement system must be placed around the perimeter of the system at regular intervals in sufficient quantity and of sufficient size so as to be clearly visible to anyone approaching the property. Any questions on those two definitions? Okay, and then going back to that section, really this section, what we're trying to fix is, of course, the updated language, the confinement language being more specific. If you've read, as you read through it, you notice that it talks about, being safe, secure, uncluttered, adequate size and space. So we really get more specific with those items. And then it, of course, section B is that exemption for the community caps. So did anyone have any concerns with this section? Any questions or edits? Okay, so section 413 includes the specific requirements for shelter, 414 is the specific requirements for shelter. And I'm going to go back up and talk about the definition for proper enclosure. So proper enclosure means any enclosure for keeping a dog while on the owner's property, securely confined indoors or in a securely enclosed and locked pen, fence, or structure, suitable to prevent the entry of young children or designed to prevent the dog from escaping. Any such pen or structure shall have secure sides and secure top, or if the dog is enclosed within a fence, all sides of the fence shall be sufficient height and bottom of the fence shall be constructed or secured in such a manner as to prevent the dog's escape either from over or from under the fence. Such enclosure must be approved by the Animal Services Director. That definition is really when it's talking about the classified animals, the potentially dangerous, the dangerous, and the vicious, but it does come up in this section, so I just wanted to read that definition now. Any questions with that definition? So as far as the shelter,
I think we're good.
Okay, so as far as the shelter, what we really wanted to fix here is really just elaborating on what the shelter structure should be. Again, you're going to see some of that more definitive language that it has a structure, it has a roof, a floor, a doorway, no wet bedding, no spoiled food, no garbage or feces or unsanitary items. So it really goes into those more in-depth requirements of what you really need to have a shelter. Some of that has come up from, cases that Sherry has prosecuted where, the judge had questions, which is some of why we're putting some of these in there. And then, of course, again, it does go ahead and include that exemption language for the community caps. So with that, did anybody have any concerns, questions, or edits there? Okay, so section 415, minimum care requirements for domestic animals and livestock. I don't think I had any additional definitions to read on this section, so it's just going into the section itself. Again, one of the things we wanted to solve at this point was being able to define what those minimum care requirements are for both domestic animals and livestock. so that if we see livestock that aren't being cared for properly, we can actually do something enforcement-wise about that. And then also animals, you know, it talks about veterinary care, maintaining their health, their humane care. It also talks about any collars and harnesses need to be properly fitted. And then, of course, it also includes that exemption on subsection F for the colony cats. Did anyone have any concerns, questions, or edits? Because I know there were a lot of changes there. Okay. Okay, so section 416, prohibitions for domestic animals and livestock. Again, we've already went over the domestic animal and livestock definition, but this one is really to, again, help us provide enforcement opportunities for if issues come up with animals being on other people's property, especially livestock. Again, right now, we don't really have a provision to do that, and that will help us do that. It also just updates some language in the menacing, which is part 2 there, just some minor general language edits. And then part 3, it does add some other noise for the disturbance of peace. It adds in crowing and other similar noises. And then talks about animals versus just dog. Right now, the disturbance really just is for a dog, but there are other animals that cause a lot of noise, like birds or chickens, you know, things like that. Did anyone have any questions? And I'm sorry, C is an exemption for the caretakers as well, for the colony cats. So there is an exemption for this in this section with C. So did anyone have any concerns, questions, or edits on that?
Yeah, I will jump in on this one a little bit, Crystal. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but specifically on was the new A3 on the disturbing the peace. I've had some issues with folks. The requirement of there needing to be 2 complaining witnesses on such. I had a house that was in a bit of a rural part of my district where 2 houses were very close to each other, property lines, but there was not another house that was close by for a good half mile. And so it was basically impossible for them to be able to get a second witness to the disturbance that was happening because nobody lived there, yet it was disturbing the house that was adjacent to where the dogs were at. I wonder if there's any way that we can address situations that arise around that, because those folks ended up actually, it wasn't the only situation, they ended up moving. And that wasn't the only reason, but like it never got satisfied. And I wonder if there's some way that we can deal with that.
So I will say, and again, I don't know if Sherry is still not able to talk, but I will say we did the stakeholders and myself went through a lot of back and forth with the disturbing the peace section, because I know that in some instances it is really hard to get to houses. When we really just went back and forth, anything that we really came up with seemed like it was not enough and too easy, so that there might be some people that would take advantage of that system to be not neighborly to their neighbors. So that's why we ended up leaving it as the 2. I will tell you, we've had a really long discussion, but if there's any, I would say if there's any edit recommendations, we would be happy to take that into consideration, because we have absolutely went back and forth a lot with the barking, because I know that is a common issue.
I do wonder if there's a way that it could be provided that if there was video evidence possibly or something that could suffice instead of having the witnesses. I don't know if that's
Like a Ring camera or something?
Yeah.
Could I come in?
Yeah, Sherry, did you want to help answer this? Thanks.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things, and Crystal's right. We did go back and forth on this a lot because we have seen this be a problem or difficult for some individuals, like you said, Commissioner Dunson. I do want to point out, though, and one of the things that we've tried to explain to folks is that it does say 2 witnesses. It doesn't say that those 2 have to live at the address. And so I do know of one individual who was confident they couldn't even have like a friend over who might hear it and be willing to complain, which, I can understand that may be possible. But, certainly if you've got a relative who's joining, who's around, or just somebody who's there to witness it and who will say that this did happen, that's sufficient. The other thing, as far as the video evidence, I think that you will find that in the cases where we've had video evidence, it's not terribly helpful because this is usually at night, it's pitch black. And in the one case where we did have a lot of video evidence, there was a lot of question of, well, but still, which dog is that? Like, yes, we can hear barking, but is it really this neighbor's dog or is the other dog 2 houses down? So there's some problems with video evidence as well.
Okay. And just to clarify then on the complaining witnesses, that can be 2 different people who reside in the home?
It could be. It just says 2 witnesses. So
okay.
It doesn't specify where they're allowed to live. They don't even have to live in Athens-Clarke County to be a witness, technically.
Okay. At some point, I think I might have got some incorrect information that was that the second witness could not be residing in the house also where it was occurring at. So if that's not the case, that is definitely an improvement. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I was reading it, that the witnesses didn't necessarily have to reside there as long as they witnessed the behavior.
And we have had a case recently that we had. It was a wife and I think it was an ex-husband that came over and witnessed for her, so that she would have 2 witnesses, so that she could, because she also lived in a rural area, and it was hard for her to exactly have any neighbors that wanted to get involved. So.
Okay.
Did anyone have anything else on this section? Okay. Okay, so section 417 is going to actually be the control and removal of animal waste. No, there's no definitions to read in this, but really some just minor language updates so that it just makes more sense when you read it. And then also adding in the exemption for the caretakers for the community cats. Did anyone have any concerns or questions for this section? Okay, so the next section is going to be guard dogs. So I'm going to read you, I apologize, I'm going to scroll a little bit. I'm going to go back up and read you 2 definitions. The first one's going to be classified dog. So classified dog shall mean a dog that has been classified as dangerous or vicious under OCGA Title 4, Chapter 8, Article 2, entitled the Responsible Dog Ownership Law, or potentially dangerous under the provisions of this chapter. And then guard dog itself, I'm going to read. Guard dog means any dog which has been trained to attack persons or other animals independently or upon verbal command, and any dog which, while not so trained, is reasonably expected to perform as a guardian of the property upon in which he is located. Any questions about those definitions? And then going back to the section, with this, we updated the sign language so that we want to make sure that people, when there's a guard dog present, that people are getting a clear depiction. of a guard dog on the sign. So like if you're too young or maybe somebody that's not able to read is able to understand that there would be a dangerous dog on that property. And then also Section B really gives us the information of who owns the dog, or if it's on a property that no one is living at, where we would find the actual dog owner. So that was a problem before, which this area or this section helps us get that information so that we can, if there's an emergency. And then finally, it just mentions that no classified dog may serve as a guard dog. So any dog that has been classified as either potentially dangerous, or vicious would not be allowed to serve as a guard dog, because those dogs we already know have a problem and a propensity to bite. Did anyone have any concerns or questions with this one?
Just a quick question on this. I mean, do we keep any kind of record of folks who have guard dogs? I'm just wondering how these updates and signage that are necessary are going to be enforced for places where they already have guard dogs previous to this.
So I am not actually aware of any guard dogs that we have that are, I guess, that would be considered guard dogs. But yes, that would be something we would keep track of, just like we do the vicious and potential dangerous dogs. You know, they would be marked within our kennel management system. The address could be flagged, and then that way we would know that there would be a possible guard dog on that property.
Okay, but this time we're not aware of any guard dogs officially being used in Athens?
I'm not aware of any. I don't know. I know Sherry's probably been here obviously longer than me. I don't know if Sherry.
Yeah, I don't know of any that are officially guard dogs. We have a lot of situations where we have reason to believe someone is using them as a guard dog, but it's somewhat hard to prove at different times.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so the next section, 419, identification and inoculation. Sorry, I forgot. Oh, okay. So the only definition that I was going to read you from this is properly fitted. So properly fitted with respect to a collar or harness means a collar or harness as applicable that is loose enough that two fingers can comfortably be placed between the collar and or harness and all points of contact with the animal's body, but from which the animal cannot easily free itself. Did anyone have any questions with that definition?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Actually, it kind of pertains to cats and the requirement that that cats wear rabies tags. Cats are known for losing their collars. Like, I feel like this is a kind of it's a high expectation for a cat to be required to wear a rabies tag at all times. I mean, I bought a 6-pack of collars for my cat, and they all disappeared within like 3 months.
So I will say that I know that we spoke about that in our stakeholders groups as well. I think one of the big thing is if you're bitten by a cat and it has a tag on, not that it couldn't be expired, but at least there's, I think, a sense of I guess safety there, that you know that cat may have inoculations, and it is a way for a cat to get home if they're not microchipped, or it's another point of contact for us to make when somebody loses their cat, because I can't tell you how often microchips are not updated. So that gives us one more resource. And I don't know, Sherry, if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, I did. I think, first of all, this is always been the requirement, I believe.
Yeah.
At least I don't think that we changed this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal.
No, we just changed some wording around it and we
Right.
added the harness part, but the requirement has always been there.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and I apologize for just not being able to see the language there for a second. And so it's just a historical requirement, and I think it draws from two things. One of which is that the primary reason that people are worried about their pets losing their collars is because they're letting their pets outside. And I fully recognize that it is difficult to keep collars on cats, but at the same time, cats aren't technically allowed to be free roaming outside anyways, unless they're in that colony. And so it's a pretty rare exception. And so the second piece of this is that, our numbers of reclaims of cats are abysmal. And that's because most of them are not microchipped. And so having a collar, honestly, is the number one way to get your cat back to you or for us to get them out of the shelter. And so I think that if I had to guess as to the policy decision behind this to begin with, it's that one, cats aren't supposed to be outside anyways. Two, if they do, as Crystal was saying, that we have some comfort that they're vaccinated for rabies. And then three, if they do get out when they're not supposed to, that we can get them back to their owner, whereas otherwise our chances are extraordinarily slim.
So is there a microchipping requirement?
When they come from our facility, every animal is microchipped. But at this time, there is not a microchipping requirement. There's most people, most people who have pets know and are going to get their animal rabies vaccinated, which essentially that vaccine comes with a free tag. The vet's going to give you a tag. Mm-hmm. Whereas a microchip costs an extra, dollar amount, and that can range really between like $30 and $70. I've seen it as high as on an invoice. So the nice thing about the tag is it's already there. The owner's already got it because they've gotten a rabies vaccine. So they would have that to put on the cat in case the cat ever got out.
I just feel like we should just require a microchipping, make a microchipping requirement for all pets. I mean, because rabies, the tags can disappear and be lost, but a microchip is forever.
And we do touch on microchipping a little bit when we get to the section of talking about the dog and cat licenses. I don't know if anyone else in the discussion wants to talk about that now, or if the commissioners want to wait until we get to
let's wait till we get to that section, I guess.
Okay, I'll flag that as a question to come up in the dog and cat licenses.
Okay.
And then B of this section is to help us again by posting signs. If you don't live on the property where your animals are housed, probably more so for the sake of livestock, but it does happen in domestic animals as well. So having to put a notice so that if we were out there, we know who to call if there's an animal issue. And then C is, of course, that exemption from the requirements for the community cats. Was there anything else that came up with that? Any other questions or concerns? Okay. So the next one is going to be animal giveaway. And I do have a couple definitions, so I apologize again. I'm going to go back up.
And while you go there, Crystal, I just want to say thanks, everybody. We're moving at a great speed, but if you think we're going too fast, you just tell us to slow down. We're glad to get into anything.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so the first definition for this section is consideration. Means payment of any sort, including but not limited to a rehoming or adoption fee, sales price, a benefit of any kind, or any other thing or service given in exchange for the transfer of an animal, whether direct or indirect. I'm going to do offer to transfer means an advertisement to other offer to transfer of any sort, whether in writing, online, or verbal. And then person means any individual, firm, partnership, corporation, joint venture, association, estate, trust, business trust, receiver, syndicate, or other group or combination acting as a unit. And then go back down to the section. Okay, so we're at the section 10, which is animal giveaway. Mostly it's going to be general language updates to assist us by being able to prosecute properly and making sure that the language just makes sense and it reads better. Did anyone have any concerns, questions, or edits for this one? No, okay. So obstruction of officer, which is 4.111. I don't have any new definitions. A lot of the updates are going to be general department updates, from animal control to services, making it, the control division, making it the services department. And then there's a lot of little language or little cleanup language that just makes it read better. And then there's, I apologize, I'm looking at my notes, sorry. And there's also some, on B, it's also update some of the areas they talk about holding an animal, like in a cage or in a vehicle, that's owned by or that's in the custody of Animal Services Department employee. Did anyone have any questions or concerns about this section? No. Okay. Okay, so section 12 is animals in vehicles. This one had a lot of updating and a lot of new language. The biggest thing that this section helps us be able to move forward with is the ability or the appropriate language to be able to transport properly. So section A talks about how you can transport a dog. I know we've all seen dogs in the back of a pickup truck with nothing to protect them. So section A is really all about that. Also, B talks about the temporary confinement of a domestic animal. And then section C talks about a law enforcement or an employee of the Animal Service Department being able to remove an animal from a vehicle. This really deals with hot cars, animals in hot cars. So it gives us permission to be able to do that. And then section D in this area, if we did remove an animal from that hot car, it talks about us being held accountable to make reasonable contact with the animal owner. I say dog, it should be animal, I apologize. It's any animal in a car. So I know there's a lot of new language there. Did anyone have any questions or concerns there?
And one just on A, I think something that I've actually seen more recently, more often than a dog or animal in the back of a truck, has been small dogs in the actual laps of drivers.
Okay.
And I have to imagine that should be illegal if it's not, but I don't know, because that seems extremely dangerous to me. But I have definitely numerous times seen dogs in the laps, like kind of sticking out the window of somebody actually driving an automobile. Yeah. I'm wondering if there's a different law covering that possibly, or a state law or something like that, but that seems extremely dangerous to me.
And Sherry, you can jump in. I don't know that we covered that. I know that we have all of, fasteners to holding the animals in and animals that were to be, but I don't think it specifically says that they have to.
It doesn't. Yeah. I think that the most obvious statute would be reckless driving. If And certainly if someone had an accident because of that, I'm sure the police officers would charge that. I've never heard, my experience as a public defender, of someone being charged with reckless driving because of a dog or a cat being loose, for that matter. But it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Okay. Yeah, nothing I feel that I'm passionate to dig into, but just seen it a few times. It's kind of crazy. All right.
That's definitely one of the common sense things that probably don't need to have a dog on your lap while driving, but it isn't something that we necessarily covered in this. It was more of the open-ended vehicles to keep animals safe that were being contained improperly.
I should also point out one other thing. The issue with being driven on public roads, the way that typically would be enforced under this ordinance usually relates to situations we've run into at like Walmart parking lots. That's the one I can think of at the moment. There is a fundamental problem when we're looking at enforcing behavior related to driving, because obviously our animal service officers are not post certified and they don't have the ability to pull vehicles over. So police certainly could use it if we were to draft an ordinance that said that that individuals can't have an animal free roaming in their vehicle while they're operating a car. But it probably would not end up being enforced by our animal services officers.
Did anyone else have any concerns, questions, or edits? Okay. Section 4.113, bird sanctuary. We only touched one line. So it's probably the cleanest section of them all that we didn't really mess with, but that was just really put in there that, obviously we don't want to just deal with the birds that are protected, but we added that the birds that aren't protected be included in there. Did anyone have any questions or concerns or edits for this one?
I do have a quick one. That I worked at a place that had starlings removed, and it was a pretty brutal process that was upsetting. And so I understand some of the concerns there, but I did look up what a lot of other places that have the statute, they require a permit to be required before you can actually have them removed. And I know that I saw in this language that we have that it has to be done under the supervision of the police department. That sounds like there's already supposedly requires some kind of formal process to be gone about to do this, but it's not really spelled out here. Do they just call the police department and ask for the police to be present? I mean, it seems a little bit vague. Yeah. And I'm thinking back whenever it was done at that employer I worked at, I don't think the police were present actually also. I don't remember that at all. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I did look up, and there's other cities that say like you have to go to the animal services and get a permit allowing you to move forward, and I guess they ensure that you actually have the police or whatever steps you have to do.
Gotcha. I will say I don't know that we talked about that process, Sherry, and since I've been the director, I haven't had to deal with that process. I don't know, Sherry, have you ever had any background with that?
Right. So I have not. It's never come up. My guess is that the process you're describing was not probably conducted under the auspices of this ordinance, and was probably some sort of pest removal company or something along those lines. The thing that it makes me think of the most is related to hunting in Athens-Clarke County. And as some of you may be aware that there's special rules about ways that you can hunt deer in neighborhoods and needing permission from the police department. I'm trying to pull it up really quickly, but it may be that if there is more detail in those ordinances that we might want to follow them. And I want to say it says that they need a special permit from the police department. So that might assist. I'm struggling to pull it up at the moment.
Okay, it's something we have to dig into right now, but yeah, I mean, if maybe an update for the next time.
Yeah, I'll write a note to update on on what process would be taken for this section.
Yeah.
And I apologize, I did just find it. So it's section 3-5-5G, and it is more restricted. It's special permits for shooting animal pests. And so maybe we can adopt something similar for this section.
Okay. Yeah, I think there obviously is expected to be some kind of process, but I think it probably should be spelled out, and because I definitely don't think it's being followed at all at this point. Yeah.
Right.
I will jump in and say that I know Commissioner Denson told me earlier that he has to leave at around 6:30. And so if we wanted to get through maybe one or two more sections and then call it an evening, that would be all right with me. How do others feel about that?
I'm good with that. I went a little further just in case that we made good time. So I'm good wherever you guys want to stop.
Okay, I'm really curious about this fees section, so I would like to get to that one. But Commissioners Link, Davenport, any thoughts on that?
On leaving early or getting through the fees section?
Oh yeah, wrapping up in another 10 minutes.
Yeah,
or so.
I'm good with wrapping up. That's
okay.
Good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let's keep moving for now, and then we'll wrap it up here shortly.
And then I did make a note that we'll come back to section 14 maybe for a progress for next meeting. Okay, so section 14 are fees. So not really any new definitions, but this really, there's going to be just first off, what this fixed was departmental changes like animal services to animal from animal control. So there's a lot of those types of changes. And then the second big fix that our changes did was take out the fees so that we can go to a fee schedule. So that way, if we wanted to change a fee or we needed to change a fee to adjust something, that's a much easier process and we don't have to sit and do this whole ordinance again just for a fee. So we did take out all of the actual monetary notes. The other thing is when somebody comes and reclaims their dog, this will help us get the cost of any medical care that we are getting from that we've provided to their animal, which isn't just medical care that we do. Sometimes we have to take animals to UGA or to a veterinarian. So this also helps us get these fees back. And then section, I think it's going to end up being C. Also talks about the dangerous and vicious dog fees or the registration fees, which again, they're not going to be in here. They're going to be part of the fee schedule. And then with respect to the potentially dangerous dog, one thing that I wanted to point out was with respect to the potentially dangerous dogs after the 24-month period, if there's been no violations, then and no further incidents with an eligible class or with anything that's with that dog, is they wouldn't have to come up with those fees every year. We would waive the fee. That would be just for the potentially dangerous. That's the classification that's at the county level, not the ones that are at the state level. And then just D is just mentioning that from time to time, the fees may be established, by the Board of Commissioners as described above. Did anyone have any questions or questions or concerns about the fees?
And Crystal, Josh here, I just wanted to remind y'all, every year as part of the budget, y'all adopt the fee schedule. And so as we update ordinances over time, we'll be taking fees out because y'all can look at that on an annual basis and it gets confusing if we have something here and it's not matching. And so this is really that opportunity with this ordinance.
Yes. And it's just the process to do it is just so much easier than, rewriting an entire ordinance just for a fee. So.
I had one question pertaining to this section. I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. I guess I was just curious whether you all experience owners that may come to pick up an animal, but then find the fees prohibitive to actually, reclaiming custody of the animal.
So sometimes, yes, especially if, there's a person that has several animals that are, that are impounded at the same time. I'll be honest, I think our fees are really, really reasonable.
I think so too, yeah.
But, that doesn't mean that someone wouldn't have the ability to not get their animal because of fees. And as far as the veterinary, it's, the veterinary fees, we try to do as much as we can in-house, but if it's an issue and we have to take it to a vet, especially if we end up taking it to UGA, that cost can get really astronomical, and they are required to pay that back to the county before they get their animal. And unfortunately, if it's an injured animal that comes in, generally we are going to take it right to a vet. We try to be really conservative and take it to a private vet over an emergency vet so that the cost will be less. But unfortunately, sometimes it just that cost is what it is, and sometimes that absolutely does hinder people from getting them.
Yeah, I was just wondering, but thank you. Any other questions from anyone else?
No. Okay. Did you want to try to do the penalties one?
Did folks want to do a kind of a recap and confirm a quorum for the next meeting and perhaps close things out here?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, first of all, let's give it up for Crystal for giving this wonderful presentation. Feel like we all learned a lot today. And then, so I guess we do have some questions that we will address at the next meeting when we come back around to this and kind of continue going through the ordinance.
Mariah, did we lose you?
Mariah, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have accidentally muted myself as I was going through my calendar to figure out when our next meeting is. Let's see. Is it April 18th?
Okay.
Does that work for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who was that?
This is Tim. That will not work for me, but I mean, if we have quorum, go ahead and move forward. But if Melissa, Patrick, and I'm actually concerned that Patrick might not be able to make it either. There's a Chamber of Commerce debate on that evening at 5:30.
Yeah,
at 5:30.
I was going to say I will not be able to make it on the 18th.
Okay, well, it sounds okay. That's good to know because I think we may not have a quorum. So I'll follow up with you all via email about whether or not we should cancel or move that month's meeting.
Okay.
But all right. Anything else from anybody before we say adieu?
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Thanks all the staff for your input. Y'all rule.
All right.
Have a great night, everybody.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, motion to adjourn. Oh,
yeah.
Go move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. See y'all soon.
Thanks, y'all.